Welcome back everyone to Brands Hatch for the next instalment of Ginetta Racing here this afternoon. It's going to be a busy afternoon for the Ginetta Championships, a reshuffled schedule after an incident in the Ginetta Junior race earlier on today means that we now have an amended schedule and 3 back-to-back Ginetta races, 1 per category. So we're kicking off the afternoon's racing with the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT Championship. We will then have a rescheduled Ginetta Junior race, the race that was originally set to be taking place this afternoon, and then the Ginetta GT Academy will have their second race of the weekend to follow. So make yourselves comfortable and settle in for an afternoon of Ginetta racing here on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. The Ginetta GT drivers then lining up on the grid, and it is as I said, their second race. They are not actually going to lose a race, luckily. They're going to get both of their 2 races in, because for 2025 we've had this shift over to double headers, the second of the 2 races, or almost always anyway, where the timetable allows for it, is a 40-minute race with a mandatory pit stop in the middle. There's a pit window between 20 and 30 minutes into the race, so at the beginning of the second half of the race, during which every single driver must make a pit stop. Now, they don't necessarily have to do anything to the cars in that pit stop, refueling, tyre changes or driver changes, etc., but they do have to come in, stop outside the in the correct pit box, and then wait for the minimum pit stop time to elapse before being released out onto the circuit. So cars then are released now onto the circuit for their green flag lap, and Jack Collins, yesterday's race winner, looking to try and do the double here at Brands Hatch. It was a well-managed race actually yesterday, I thought, for Jack Collins. Only his second appearance on the podium this year and his first race victory in 2025, and he managed to hang on nicely at the front of the pack to claim the race win under a reasonable amount of pressure as well, it must be said, and he'll be expecting, I'm sure, another challenge in this second race. The grid then as follows: Jack Collins on pole position with Pro-Am frontrunner Nick White next. Cameron Pratt-Thompson started at the front in yesterday's race, had a poor first lap which he'll be hoping to put behind him. He's got Luke Shaw, the AM pole sitter, for company on row 2. Row 3 for Robert Cronin and Archie Clark. Another to watch out for is Archie Clark, the championship leader coming into this weekend. Alex Duncan and Harry Gamble are next. Harry Gamble was overtaken by Nick White for the Pro-Am lead on the last lap of yesterday's race and tumbled down the order as a result. Ali Jafali is lining up 9th alongside Hadley Simpson. That's the 5th row of the grid. Row 6 for Oliver Fordham, whose race ended in spectacular fashion on top of, partially, the barriers at Surtees yesterday. He'll be starting 11th with James Townsend alongside him on row 6. Row 7 for Colin White and Dominic Paul. And at the back of the field, Emma Tomlinson and James Rowling. Emma was actually the driver being overtaken by Oliver Fordham, I seem to recall, when Oliver got it all wrong going into Surtees. Onboard camera with Archie Clark. Archie, after yesterday's race, retains this very, very healthy championship lead. 59 points he is clear of Robert Cronin. It was only second place for the 5-time race winner this year, Archie Clark, yesterday, but it was valuable championship points, and it means that he remains in a healthy position. Not quite strong enough, we don't think, to wrap the championship up today, but certainly looking good heading to Donington Park next time out, and if he can win this race, he will certainly be in a position that's tough to beat for his championship opposition. So 40 minutes of racing then in the late summer sunshine here at Brands Hatch. 2 by 2 they run to the line. Set for the rolling start. The V8 engine's about to rumble into life. Jack Collins and Nick White on the front row. Nick White, remember, looking for another good result in his quest for a Pro-Am championship. And if he could win the race overall, that would certainly help him out significantly. Off they go towards Paddock Hill Bend. Absolutely neck and neck between the front row starters, and Cameron Pratt-Thompson thinks about making it 3 wide. Bails out of it, no, gets into Nick White, who is spun. Nick White is off into the gravel trap, and Nick White from the front row of the grid is potentially going no further. Major drama for Nick, and it was Cameron Pratt-Thompson, I think, who got into the side of him there. I'm sure we'll get another look at that, but Cameron Pratt-Thompson then immediately making his presence felt at the first corner. There goes Harry Gamble to the inside of Ali Jafali. Ali's target is Luke Shaw, the bronze, white and black car immediately ahead, with whom he is battling for the AM Championship. There's more paint traded now. That's Cronin to the inside of Cameron Pratt-Thompson at Surtees, and levers aside the number 39 car. Door to door they'll run down the hill, and it's the championship leader, Archie Clark, who sees a gap to the inside of both of them. Archie Clark, with his elbows well and truly out, goes from 4th to 2nd, or does he? Cronin tries to stand his ground around the outside. There's nothing he can do, and Clark with another stellar opening lap. That has been the story of his season. Not always the strongest qualifier, but you can absolutely rest assured that he will fight his way to the front as soon as he possibly can. He's in 2nd place. I was about to make the point. He was some way behind race leader Jack Collins, but the safety car is out, and that means that that gap will evaporate, and Archie Clark suddenly rubs his hands with glee and realises that he's right on the tail of the race leader. Nick White will not be rubbing his hands with glee. His race ending in the Paddock Hill Bend gravel trap, and from the front row of the grid, Nick White out of the race, and that is not good news for his hopes of a good race result, but certainly does his championship hopes in Pro-Am absolutely no good at all either. So lots to unpack from that opening lap of the race, much of it, in fairness, involving Cameron Pratt-Thompson, a bit like we saw yesterday, really. Cameron started, I believe, on the outside of row 1 yesterday, 2nd on the grid, which has not been a lucky starting position, it must be said, in the Ginetta GT races so far this weekend. This time came from 3rd, and look, he has a go here at, well, actually, briefly, I thought was going to try and get to the inside of both of the front row starters, decided not to have a go at Collins. He was to the inside of Nick White, and to be fairness, Cameron didn't really drift out into Nick White, did he? It was just a bit of a pinch at the apex. This will give us a better idea. Yeah, contact made whilst Cameron Pratt-Thompson's right-hand side tyres were basically on the white line, so not really much he could have done. They headed out of Paddock Hill Bend. This was Archie Clark's view of a spinning Nick White. He nips to the inside of one car. That was Alex Duncan, I think, as he headed down the hill, and immediately tried to find a way past the 2 cars ahead. This was what Nick White saw or felt. There's the contact. And around goes car 57, lucky not to be collected by anybody else, actually, as he spun. That car beaching the gravel. You can hear him there giving it a bit of a throttle application to see if he could drag it out, but I think he probably already knew that wasn't that likely to happen. So Nick White's car extricated very rapidly from the gravel trap, has to be said. The marshals and recovery crews over at Paddock Hill Bend well versed in how best to dig a racing car out of that gravel trap. But unfortunately for Nick White, that's his weekend done. Nick, who won the Pro-Am class yesterday in slightly contentious fashion. He got to the inside of Harry Gamble on the last lap, I think it was, down into Graham Hill Bend, and got through. There was a bit of contact though, and Harry Gamble went shooting off onto the grass on the outside and tumbled down the order because we'd recently gone back racing after a safety car period, so everyone was bunched together, and Harry Gamble ended up finishing only 14th. And you score points in this championship based upon your overall finishing position. Regardless of where you are in class, it is your overall finishing position that dictates the points. So Nick White ended up 5th and Harry Gamble only 14th. So in the end, no further action. So it wasn't that a penalty went the way of Nick White, far from it. He was deemed not to be at fault, and it was actually decided by the clerk of the course that Harry Gamble had braked a bit earlier than normal into Graham Hill Bend. That's what opened the door for Nick White to go through, and so no penalty was given. But Harry Gamble, I'm sure, was not particularly appreciative of the way that his race concluded, and now knows the importance of trying to score some good points in this one. There is Harry Gamble, the Hooch liveried yellow and black number 23 car, which ironically still isn't leading the class, because actually it's Alex Duncan who's got the class lead in the number 27 car. So Alex Duncan leading Pro-Am at the moment. He was only 9th yesterday, 2nd in class, but he's leading the class right now. On the timing tower to the left-hand side of your screen, the white backgrounded numbers, they're Pro drivers, the black background is Pro-Am, and the more numerous orange backgrounds for the AM drivers, showing that actually this championship, whilst it is sort of the pinnacle of Ginetta one-mate racing these days, is still very, very popular with up-and-coming, less experienced drivers. That's always been the way with Ginetta, really. It's always been a popular place to come and race, regardless of your experience level. And we've got a great range of talent out on track this weekend. Nick White sadly not on track, so he becomes the race's first retirement. And of course, whilst the safety car's out, the clock continues to tick down and eat into the race. You can't make that mandatory pit stop though before the halfway mark. 20 minutes into the race is when the pit lane window opens, and any time between then and 30 minutes into the race you are able to come in and make the pit stop. But doing so outside of that window will, well, if you do it too late, will result in a penalty, and if you come in too early, then that won't count as the mandatory stop. Nick White looking on at well, what for now is an empty racetrack, but very shortly I think he'll have cars coming past him at full speed, because I suspect the race will restart this time. Yes, it will. The lights are out on the Ginetta G56 safety car, and Nick White has a trackside view, a ringside view of the battle that's about to resume. Now, after the late safety car yesterday, Archie Clark never really had enough time to do anything about Jack Collins. Now he's got 33 3/4 minutes of racing still to go, and he is latched onto the rear bodywork of the number 12 machine as it weaves down towards Clearway's corner. Jack went quite late yesterday. He's going to do the same sort of thing just before the turning point for Clearways. It's basically exactly what he did in the safety car restart yesterday, and it's a similar result. Maybe Archie Clark a little bit closer than he was yesterday afternoon. They blast across the line then, up towards Paddock Hill Bend, and racing resumes here at Brands Hatch. Collins with the advantage. We ride on board then with Archie Clark through Paddock Hill Bend. It is Robert Cronin there in third position. Cameron Pratt-Thompson still fourth. And there, Luke Shaw on his toes to try and find a way past the Pro-Am leader, Alex Duncan. Around the outside goes the second place Pro-Am driver, though, Harry Gamble. That gives him the inside line for Graham Hill-Bend, and that's not really Luke Shaw's fight, so sensible decision taken there to allow him through. Then it is Hadley Simpson. So Hadley Simpson a lot further down on the grid for this one than you might have expected for car 37. He is another pro driver. He slips to the inside of Luke Shaw, who has to go off in avoidance of Harry Gamble. Luke Shaw's in the barriers. He's broken the rear wing off the car, and Luke Shaw, who had a narrow championship lead in the AM Championship, is surely now going to be out of the race. Certainly will require the attention of the pit crew. The rear wing splintering off as he ran into those rector barriers, and his new low downforce Ginetta G56, I'm afraid, is not going to be able to yield the sort of lap times that he needs it to. Now he will have no rear grip through some of these high-speed corners. I wonder whether he even realises that that rear wing is missing. I'm sure he will as soon as he starts really pushing again. And either way, he drops right down the order. So his rival in the championship, Ali Jafali, now takes the class lead. Coming into this race, Ali was 12 points behind Luke Shaw after drop scores were calculated. Well, there is Luke Shaw, and I don't see him outscoring Jafali this afternoon. So this could be another big turning point in the AM Championship battle. All of that triggered by a very odd-looking spin, really, for Harry Gamble, who just seemed to lose it on his own. Maybe the tyre pressures had dipped a little bit more than he expected behind the safety car, and around he went. Luke Shaw hasn't pitted, in fairness. He's carrying on, but the rear of the car looks anything but stable. Here's a replay, so watch the yellow and black car look. It's going defensive. That's Harry Gamble, the first yellow and black car, I should say. And as car number 23 turns through Surtees, did he get the curb? It was hard to tell from there, but either way, Luke Shaw had nowhere to go, had to go to the outside in avoidance, and just a glancing blow against the rector cell barriers, which ordinarily we say cushion the impact quite nicely and reduce the damage done to the car significantly, but it just caught the end of the wing, I think, and that was enough to pull it off. So Luke Shaw not out, but drops down to 14th position. Harry Gamble, the only man behind him now, actually, in 15th place. Be interesting to see what sort of pace he's got. I don't think he sustained any damage in that. Nobody collected him. Big beneficiary out of that was Hadley Simpson. He's up 2 places now to 6th, ahead of new AM leader Ali Jafali. So Pro-Am then becoming the class that no one wants to win, really. Nick White is out. We've got Harry Gamble down in 15th place, and that means that Alex Duncan now is your Pro-Am leader. Already was, to be fair, and is now fairly unchallenged in the class, Alex Duncan. He turns his way through the right-hander at Clearways. Alex has competed at every round this year. He's finished every race bar one, that being this equivalent race, actually, the pit stop race at Snetterton last time out. And has had some decent results, but good to see him up there now leading the class. There's Ali Jafali, the AM leader, and he can hardly believe his luck, I'm sure. He came into the weekend a little bit closer to Luke Shaw in the points, but Luke beat him to the race victory yesterday. Really, Ali never looked likely to challenge him, actually. Got stuck behind another car for much of the race. In fact, it was Alex Duncan that Ali was stuck behind for the majority of the race, only getting past him on the very final lap, but by that point Luke Shaw was too far away. So Jafali now with a brilliant opportunity to get some good points scored. There is the repaired number 4 car of Oliver Fordham. It runs 3rd place in the AM class. That's the car that also had a meeting with the barriers at Surtees yesterday. Sadly, that was a meeting with the barriers from which it did not emerge unscathed, and his race was run. They've replaced the front bodywork on that number 4 car, and also the same sort of story, I think, for James Townsend. His car doesn't look like it's sporting the front bodywork that it had at the start of the weekend. The SVG Motorsport team have been busy getting that car fixed. And Fox Motorsport likewise with Oliver Fordham's machine being chased by Dominic Paul. So this is 3rd, 4th and 5th in the AM class, and healthy battle here between these three. Dominic Paul closing in the Triple M Motorsport car, the only Triple M Motorsport car on the grid. Nice variety of teams actually, and there is a teams championship in this series as well. Elite Motorsport lead Raceway Motorsport quite healthily coming into the weekend. Elite, of course, one of the top teams in the Ginetta Junior championship as well. There is one of their drivers right on cue, Robert Cronin in 3rd place, and he has got Archie Clark for MDD Racing ahead of him. E3 Sports Jack Collins leading the way. This was the way in which these three finished yesterday as well. Collins the winner, Clark 2nd and Cronin 3rd. To say at the moment, doesn't look like Archie Clark's got an answer for Jack Collins' pace, does it? And much as we saw yesterday, Jack able to pretty comfortably manage the race and not have to seemingly overdrive too much in order to do so. This race, though, is the test of that, isn't it? It's one thing to be quick over 20 minutes, and of course we had a safety car in that race, so really it was only about 15 minutes of flat-out racing. Now, though, 40 minutes, obviously twice the distance, which means twice the distance for the tyres to have to manage, and they need to be careful not to burn through their Pirelli rubber too quickly. Otherwise, that will come back to bite them in the second half of the race. Still Fordham from Townsend from Paul is the order, 3rd, 4th and 5th respectively in AM class. They're some way behind the top two, Ali Jafali and Colin White. Luke Shaw, by the way, still running, but he's well off the pace. His last lap was a 1:37.9, which compared to the front-running AM driver, Ali Jafali, a 32.7, 5 and a bit seconds off the pace. So Luke Shaw is now basically just trundling around to pick up some points, and hoping maybe that others drop out of contention ahead of him. He's been overtaken by Harry Gamble now, though. So that is now 15th and last of the runners for Luke Shaw. And some of his fellow AM rivals head up through Paddock Hill Bend. At the pointy end of the field, though, this is the battle for 3rd, and it is Cameron Pratt-Thompson applying the pressure now to Robert Cronin. Robert has a little bit of a slide from the rear of the car there as he came out of Graham Hill Bend, mainly I think because he was trying to make sure he didn't slip wide over the exit curb and ping the track limit sensors. There's a bit of damage repair I think that's been done to the front of his Elite Motorsport car as well, so quite a few walking wounded after yesterday's race clearly. And Robert Cronin keeping Cameron Pratt-Thompson at bay. Cameron able in this race, it seems, to display the pace that he did in qualifying when he qualified on the front row for race 1 and just didn't have the rub of the green really on the opening lap or so, and dropped right down the order. Eventually finished 6th, but had been running I think in 7th for much of the race. And this time around, okay, he's dropped a position from where he started. He's been involved in a skirmish or two, but he is at least able to tag along with the lead group now and looks pretty pacey. Previous lap, he was quicker than Cronin ahead by 1/10 and a half. But it's difficult now to go any quicker without actually having a go at getting past Cronin. They're equidistantly spaced out as they cross the line. Clark does a 31.8, a 31.8 flat for Cronin, and a 31.9 this time for Cameron Pratt-Thompson as the gaps ebb and flow. That compares, though, to the pace of the race leader, Jack Collins, a 1:31.3, a new fastest lap for the race leader. Yesterday's fastest lap, also set by Jack Collins, was a 1:30.9, so 4/10 off the pace, which tells you a couple of things actually, because maybe the track is not quite as quick as it was yesterday afternoon, but I suspect that is Jack Collins driving a little bit more conservatively to mind the tyres. This is not looking all that conservative. That is Townsend to the inside of Oliver Fordham and moving through then. So James Townsend gaining a place, and that gets him onto the AM class podium. Fordham a little bit wide over the exit curb at Graham Hill Bend as he tries to carry the speed down the Cooper Straight, but is not able to get up the inside into Surtees. So James Townsend up to 3rd, 9th overall, but 3rd in class, and now has to keep an eye on his mirrors because Dominic Paul is creeping up behind him, although not that close at this stage as they plunge downhill into the right-hander at Hawthorne. And the repaired number 4 Fox Motorsport car looks to try and find a way back ahead of the number 3 of James Townsend ahead. Down through Dingledale, up towards Sheen Curve. Fordham not with a brilliant run there through Westfield, in fairness. So by the time they get to Sheen, looks to me like Dominic Paul is closer to him than he is to James Townsend ahead. Townsend really getting his head down. Problem is, they were at the beginning of the lap 6 seconds behind Colin White. That kicking up the dust in the background, by the way, was a recovering Harry Gamble, who's already back to 12th place. Now, again, ordinarily we'd be saying, well, he's only racing against AM drivers, so there's not really a lot to be gained here for Harry Gamble. But as I said, your outright finishing position is what counts. So Harry Gamble needs to get past these AM drivers as quickly as possible. He has still over half the race to go and could still get a decent result. Harry Gamble sliding through Paddock Hill Bend. What was his lap time that time? 1:32.1, which was a personal best. It was 6/10 slower than the race leader, but about as quick as anybody else, really. So Harry Gamble is looking reasonably strong on speed. The problem is he's down in 12th position, but give him a couple of laps and he could be back into the top 10 here, because he's lapping significantly quicker than this group of cars ahead. 2.6, 2.7 seconds quicker than them on the previous lap, and he'll be further assisted if they start battling each other, which is what's happening. Dominic Paul pulls to the outside of Oliver Fordham down Pilgrim's Drop. Oliver knows, though, that he still doesn't have an overlap, and so Oliver able to take the wide traditional racing line into the quick right-hander. Dominic Paul goes in tight. He's slow on the exit as a result, and Harry Gamble, well, I was going to say needed no second invitation to get to the inside, but did think better of that move into Westfield, and that probably now means he'll have to sit behind Dominic Paul through Sheen as well, or does he? He goes to the inside, and yeah, it's a half look, but he didn't commit to the move. What about Sterling's? No, still can't get through, so Dominic Paul has now managed to keep Harry Gamble behind him for 3 laps. He's defending, as he has every right to do, into clearways, because this is a battle for position. Gamble, though, switches to the inside. No, not close enough there either, so this overtake is not proving to be quite as straightforward as Harry Gamble might have expected. And the frustration will start to build in the car, and the longer he sits behind the Dominic Paul machine, the hotter the tyres and brakes will get. He's getting a bit frustrated as well, so sliding the car around. This is pretty close as well. Cameron Pratt-Thompson in behind Robert Cronin, who's really dropped away now from Archie Clark. Jack Collins just set another new fastest lap of 1:31.29 now, so he's getting quicker. Nobody else, apart from Luke Shaw at the back, who's still finding ways to drive around his damaged car. No one else is going anywhere near their personal best lap times, so Jack Collins with pace to spare, it would seem. Let's just hope he's not taking too much out of the tyres, and won't live to regret that later on. He's also the only driver, look, still running in the position in which he started. So Jack Collins started from pole, has led the whole way so far. Everything behind him has changed. Archie Clark up 4 places now. Many times have we seen Archie do that this year. It's been amazing to watch him on cold tyres, the confidence that he's got. Remember, these cars run on slick Pirelli tyres, and they are not the easiest of things with low downforce and high power on cold slick tyres to handle, but he is just a cut above the rest, isn't he? Emma Tomlinson being warned about exceeding track limits. That's the first of, I suspect, several warnings that we'll see over the next 20 minutes or so. Cameron Pratt-Thompson now starting to really look good here, and you feel that if he could get past Cronin, Clark isn't that far ahead. So Cameron Pratt-Thompson getting stronger as the race goes on. But where, if anywhere, can he make a move against Cronin? Well, a good exit from Graham Hill Bend will help, but he didn't get off the turn quite as well, I don't think, as Cronin. Oh, and that's Hadley Simpson. Hadley Simpson's had a drama down into Graham Hill Bend. Now, he was a couple of tenths or so behind Alex Duncan at the start of the lap, and it looks to me like he's had contact with someone or something. So Hadley Simpson may have got a bit too close to Alex Duncan in his pursuit of 5th position. So a chunk taken out of the left front corner of the 37 car, and he's lost a position to Ali Jafali as well. So more points for Ali. And this is of some real significance now in the AM Championship, because he runs 6th and Luke Shaw is in the pit lane. So Luke Shaw finally, there he is, look, finally bringing that car to the attention of the team. The loss of that rear wing will have made the car pretty undrivable. His personal best lap, a 1:36.0. 4.5 seconds off the leader's pace. This is what happened between Duncan and Simpson. Oh, Simpson tried to tuck him behind Alex Duncan and, well, was clearly a little bit later on the brakes than the 27 machine was, and ran into the back of him. So damage done to his car. not quite to the extent of the damage done to Luke Shaw's car, and Luke Shaw is getting out of the car, so it will be a non-finish this for Luke Shaw. And as I said, that is really important now for the championship. Out he gets, and a massive frustration this for Luke Shaw, who's done everything right this season so far and had extended that AM Championship lead after yesterday's race, and now sees all of his hard work undone. Oh, Hadley Simpson's off! Hadley Simpson's off! I think something might have broken on the front of the car, and he's beached himself in the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend. Now, this could require a safety car period, and we're in the pit window. The pit lane window has just opened, so in come Oliver Ford and Dominic Paul as well. But if we get a safety car period, what does that mean for pit stops? Where are the leaders? They are heading down into Hawthorne, so it's a really big call this for race control to make, because throwing a safety car now could massively upset the situation just because of the timing of it. Hadley Simpson's race clearly done. Now they may decide that they can cover that under double waved yellows for a couple of laps, get the pit window out of the way. The Zentek Motorsport driver stalks away from the car. His race unravelling really very quickly in the space of just under a lap between the initial contact and then his gravelly demise. Now, does Jack Collins come in? No, Jack Collins doesn't come in. Now, is that because he's confident they're not going to throw a safety car, or is that a lapse in judgment from the team? What about everybody else? Well, no, Clark, Pratt Thompson and Cronin stay out, but the order in which I said that has changed, because Pratt Thompson's now ahead of Cronin. Cronin with a very slow lap, actually, 2 seconds off the pace that time, has dropped behind Cameron Pratt Thompson. So there is Cameron Pratt Thompson, there Robert Cronin, there Ali Jafali. So Ali Jafali is in, the AM leader, into the pit lane. Now this it might be that it doesn't matter. If they don't throw a safety car, then none of this really makes much difference. But if they do decide that they need a safety car to cover the car that's off at Paddock Hill Bend, this could be an inspired move from Jafali. My gut instinct, though, says that they've left it this long without throwing it. I suspect they're going to try and see the pit window through at the very least and just deal with that car under yellow flags. So tyre pressure adjustments going on. They won't change the tyres. They obviously don't need to refuel it. There's no driver change. It's just a quick check over. They might have a little chat with the driver. We've got Harry Gamble, Emma Tomlinson, James Rowling is in too, looking the 75. But Harry Gamble into the pit lane. And again, tyre pressure adjustments, they'll be lowering the tyre pressures. The pressures build up in the tyres to extreme levels over the course of a race stint. And anything they can do to just try and lower those slightly, the driver will welcome. Right, yes, I think we're safe from a safety car because they're going to cover this under a live snatch. So the JCB gets sent out under racing conditions, but with yellow flags flying at that area of the circuit. And so they will deal with that without the need for a safety car. Collins is in though, so the leader has now decided to bail for the pit lane and is followed by Archie Clark. What about the others? Pratt Thompson goes through to take the lead, but Cronin is in. So Collins, Clark and Cronin, first, second and fourth they ran at the time, are all in the pit lane. So we'll keep an eye on these pit stops. As I said, there is a minimum pit stop time that they need to adhere to. And anyone who's found to have not spent enough time in the pit lane will be penalised. There is Hadley Simpson's car being pulled away. This is what happened. Now, was it a breakage or was it a drama with Ali Jafali? He's got that damage, remember, on the left front corner. And, oh no, oh wow, goes right over the back of Ali Jafali's car. So it wasn't a failure, or damage resulting failure. Anyway, it was definitely a collision. So, wow, that was a second bit of contact within the space of less than a lap for Hadley Simpson, and it's taken him well and truly out of the race. The MDD squad there working in the pit lane. There is Jack Collins' car. That's about to be rolled back. And it is a 60-second stationary pit stop that they must serve. So 60 seconds stationary. That's now been served by Jack Collins. Look at Cronin, though. Cronin's ahead of Clark. So Cronin is ahead of Archie Clark. That's a net change for second position, I think. So Robert Cronin, who actually, remember, had been overtaken by Cameron Pratt Thompson as well, hadn't he? So Cronin, who was fourth at the time of the safety car, might now be second. He's certainly ahead of Clark, though. So the championship leader with not a brilliant pit stop. Looking at the pit stop times total from pit in to pit out, 1:28.3 for Clark. and that seems okay to me. So, right, out comes the number 3, that is James Townsend, and immediately into battle as Colin White tries to go around the outside of him. Colin has pitted. The only person now who hasn't stopped, actually, is the race leader, Cameron Pratt-Thompson. So Cameron Pratt-Thompson, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, with a 0 next to his name. Obviously, Hadley Simpson and Nick White yet to pit, but they sadly won't get the chance to now. Their races are run. So a dramatic middle portion of the race, definitely. And it awaits to be seen now exactly what the order will be. Until Cameron Pratt-Thompson pits, we won't properly know, I suppose, because he's going to slot in somewhere around the leading group. There he is. So Cameron Pratt-Thompson then, in the SVG Motorsport vinyl detail liveried car, heads down into clearways. Now he could stay out for another 3.5 minutes, so he could do another couple of laps if he wanted to, and he's in clean air, so he might elect to do that. No, does now come in. So Cameron Pratt-Thompson then from the race lead is in. Now let's see where he comes out in relation to Jack Collins, and in particular Robert Cronin and Archie Clark, with whom he was battling. There is Collins at Druids, but of course he's nearly a full lap away from Cameron Pratt-Thompson, 1 minute and 23 seconds behind, so that was just to unlap himself, and it's next time by that we will see exactly what the running order will be. So Collins turns into Surtees. He is now 5.2 seconds ahead of Robert Cronin, so I think it was just that Clark had a slow stop for whatever reason, and Cronin in the number 26 car did not. Yeah, 1:24.9 was his pit stop time, as opposed to Archie Clark, 28.3. So 3.5 seconds gained by Cronin in the pit lane. Clark, in fairness, is now starting to close back in on Cronin. Now that front bodywork's coming loose, isn't it, on Clark's car as well? So Archie Clark then with more trouble perhaps on the horizon. That may well attract the attention of the Clark of the course if they decide that that is likely to go flying up into the air. The air, of course, will catch underneath it at high speed. You can see it pulling the bodywork up. Looks almost like there's a bit of tape that's come loose that had been securing that. Surprised in a way that the team didn't spot that during the pit stop, but when the car's stationary, it might not be obvious. It's only when it's at high speed that it starts to flap around. Right, out of clearways they go. There is Cameron Pratt-Thompson in the pit lane. There on the track is Jack Collins to retake the lead. Will Cameron Pratt-Thompson be ahead of Robert Cronin? The answer, I think, will be no. Cronin and Clark both go through. Cameron Pratt-Thompson, 1:29.2 was his pit stop, and that was slower than both of the drivers who've just gone through. So quite a chunk of time lost, actually. About 4 seconds lost to Cronin, and a second or so in the pit lane lost to Archie Clark. So the order will be Collins the leader, Cronin, Clark battling for second, and Cameron Pratt-Thompson with it all to do again. There is Ali Jafali, still leading quite comfortably, actually, in the AM class, and that's Alex Duncan ahead of him. Now, this was the situation through much of yesterday's race. Ali Jafali stuck behind Alex Duncan. There was a bit more frustration for Ali yesterday, though, because the next car ahead of Duncan was Luke Shaw. Well, of course, Luke taking no further part in this race now, so regardless what happens, as long as Jafali finishes the race, he'll be fine. It doesn't look as though that whack that he copped from Hadley Simpson has done any major damage to the car either, so his lap times are still fine, mid 1 minute 32s. That's every bit as quick as anybody else around him. So they build them strong, these Ginetta G56s, GTP8 as it's known, and despite what was a fairly hefty whack, it's seemingly not deranged the rear suspension, thankfully. Jack Collins then back into the lead of the race, blasts past the pits, and will now officially on the timing screen be reinstated as the race leader. What's his gap back to Robert Cronin? It's growing, I would say, isn't it? It was 5.5 seconds last time I checked. It is now 6.3 seconds. Cronin to Clark continues to come down, and Cameron Pratt-Thompson 1.7 seconds back now at the end of his outlap. So this has all the makings of a pretty intriguing battle for the lower steps of the podium. Clark looks quicker than Cronin right now, and he certainly looks fired up, doesn't he? Cronin, remember, is Archie Clark's nearest rival in the championship. He may well be 59 points behind in the championship, Robert Cronin, but he is still potentially a championship contender. They'll have 2 races still to go after this one. And if Cronin can take even a couple of points out of Archie Clark in this race, that will be good news indeed for the man who's second place in the championship. Here, meanwhile, is James Townsend. So Townsend, through all of this, has found himself in third position in the AM class and not a million miles behind Colin White, who is second. So that car just up the road, the traditional CWS logo on Colin White's car, is the next car in class for Townsend. Jafali is quite a long way up the road. 18 seconds up the road, in fact, from this battle. But for second place in the AM class, it could be a pretty tasty scrap in the closing laps. They thunder downhill underneath the bridge and down into the braking zone at Hawthorn. It's not a particularly significant braking zone though, because you carry a lot of speed through the right-hander. Same here for Westfield. Dab on the brakes, maybe down a gear, hammer the inside curb, and then they plunge downhill through Dingle Dell. It's not often actually that trackside cameras are really able to properly give you an idea of the undulations of a circuit, but that great shot as they come towards us into Sheen Curve really does demonstrate the elevator drop out of Westfield. This then for second place overall, and Archie Clark versus Robert Cronin. Cronin will be extra incentivised here to not allow the championship leader through. Can he find a way past then? Out of Surtees they go, up towards the Grand Prix layout. And can Archie Clark make a move? He'll get a bit of a slipstream down the hill, but not really an overtaking opportunity in these cars, Hawthorn Bend. To be honest, most of this Grand Prix element of the circuit is just about building momentum, getting close enough that when you get to the Indy circuit, where most of the overtaking opportunities lie, there is an opportunity then to make the move. Brilliant sound they make, and we ride on board now and hear firsthand the noise that the V8 engine out front is making as they turn through Stirling's. Inch perfect over the exit curve for both of them. Frustrating this for Clark. He was ahead of Robert Cronin before the pit stops, and you might be wondering how on earth can you lose so much time when there's no actual pit work to be done. Well, it's all about the stopwatch. You know, whoever is in charge of making the calculation as to when the car needs to be released, they've got to be on it. And if you delay by even a second or two, that can really cost you in a series as tightly contested as this one. Ooh, Cronin not exactly making friends with the apex at Druids, but hooks it up to the late apex, carries good speed off the corner. It looked as though we were catching him through the turn, and then on the run down the hill, the gap went back out again. Wincing there at the noise of the car bottoming out over the inside curve at Graham Hill Bend. But Archie Clark not driving with any real mechanical sympathy right now, is he? He just wants to try and get past Cronin. That bodywork not providing him with any major issues just yet. And as we head down into Hawthorn, Cameron Pratt-Thompson then piling the pressure on as well. He's starting to get closer to these two. 5-second penalty, by the way, for Emma Tomlinson. Now, that is for a track limits infringement. Remember, she was being warned about that earlier on, and has now been handed 5 seconds to add on to her race time. She's only half a second ahead of James Rowling in the battle not to be last, so that unfortunately is going to settle that one in the favour of James in the number 75 car. Less, of course, he picks up a penalty. We're also hearing there's a possibility of a short pit stop for car number 63. Now, that is Ali Jafali. This is Ali Jafali, and he is the driver who's potentially been pinged for a short pit stop. And yes, if I look at the timing screen, his pit stop is the only one showing in red, which suggests that it was short. Now, of course, race control will want to double check that with the timekeepers to make sure that it's not a timing glitch of any sort, but should be fairly black and white, that. They'll be able to figure it out quite easily, and if he does get a penalty for that, that will be a much more significant one than 5 seconds for exceeding track limits. It might well cost him a couple of positions, so the damage that he's doing potentially to Luke Shaw's championship lead will be reduced if that happens. We'll keep you posted on that one. Back on board with Archie Clark, though, as we continue to hound Robert Cronin, and this is by far the closest that we've been. You can see even from the onboard camera that front bodywork flapping in the air, but that will be hopefully not too much of a distraction as he drops down into Hawthorn and rounds the quick right-hander. Needs to get a move on here, does Archie Clark, though, because if he wastes too much time battling with Cronin, then Cameron Pratt-Thompson will arrive on his tail in a hurry. On the previous lap, Cameron Pratt-Thompson was 3/10 quicker than Archie Clark, who is stuck up behind the Elite Motorsport car. Brown Sheen Up towards Sterling's they go. They tip into the left-hander. And can we see any reason maybe for Cronin losing time? The car doesn't look like it's sliding around too much. He's missed a couple of apexes, but I think it's just that Archie Clark is really in the rhythm, although his car pitching around as well as it turns into clearways. That cost him maybe a length or so on corner exit. And he's therefore not close enough to attack into paddock. In fact, Cameron Pratt-Thompson's closer to him now than he is to Cronin. So this was exactly the danger for Archie Clark. If he didn't immediately find a way past Cronin, then there was a danger that this man would start to apply the pressure, and that's exactly what's happening. We saw the speed that Cameron had immediately before the pit stops began. Unfortunately, came out of the pit lane further behind than he had been, but he's closed back in again and has just under 4 minutes left to try and get onto the podium. Round Surtees, slightly defensive line for Cronin. That will slow his exit slightly. Clark again is good through that first sector, isn't he? And as they climb over the hill towards Pilgrim's Drop, he's almost as close now as he was a lap ago. But almost as close isn't going to be enough, is it? He needs to be able to get alongside the number 26 car. And he's not yet been able to do that, really. Through Westfield Corner, down the hill through Dingledale. Oh, a bit wide over the curb there for Clark. He's really trying, throwing everything at this. It's not essential from a championship perspective that he finishes ahead of Robert Cronin, but it would be handy. It would mean he basically just needs to turn up at Donington Park and finish the races, and he should be champion. But is he going to be able to wrestle this second place away from his title rival, I wonder? Third and fourth in the championship overall, by the way, are Nick White and Harry Gamble, the two leading Pro-Am drivers. They were only a point apart coming into this race as Oliver Fordham pulls in potentially to retire. Will be his second non-finish from 2 races if that's the case. But yeah, Nick White and Harry Gamble, they were only a point apart for the Pro-Am Championship lead coming into this race. Of course, White out and Gamble now up to 7. So Harry Gamble is going to reclaim, I believe, the Pro-Am Championship lead, and may yet gain more places, although he's not that close to Ali Jafali at the moment, so perhaps 7th is as good as it will get. Is 3rd as good as it will get for Archie Clark, though? That's the question. This is where he's been able to close the most over recent laps. So he takes a little bit more of that inside curve than Cronin. That just knocks him a bit wider over the exit curve, though, so short-term gain through the middle of the corner, but then loses a bit of momentum up the hill. And so again, Robert Cronin doesn't feel the need to defend. They'll have one more lap to go after this one. And is Archie Clark in the mood for settling for 3rd place, or is he in the mood for throwing a do-or-die move to try and get 2nd position? Great view there of the commitment required through Westfield. Head up towards Sheen, again fully committed over that inside curb. And then they hit the brakes into Sterling's, float the car through. Now pick up the throttle. It's so easy to get on the throttle too early there, and the banking runs out in a hurry. One more lap to go then, and Clark yet to really show his nose. There, by the way, is Jack Collins. Well, I was posing the question earlier on whether or not he would have the long-run pace, because he was really getting the most out of the tyres in the early part of the race, and I worried maybe that he'd run out of grip towards the end. That absolutely has not happened. He's one of only 2 drivers in the 1:31 at the moment. You're looking at the other driver who is capable of running those lap times, Archie Clark, who sails into Druids, closes in on Robert Cronin. This battle going on nearly 8 seconds adrift of the race leader, so Collins has the win in hand. The question is, who joins him on the podium and in which order? Archie Clark closer than ever into Surtees. Is there a lunge to be had to the inside? He thought about it, maybe just trying to distract Robert Cronin, but that didn't work, and Cronin turns through the corner as intended. In fact, it's Clark who runs a bit wide over the exit curb, but again has a decent run heading down the hill. They thunder past us towards Hawthorne for the final time. But realistically, probably only one more overtaking opportunity left, and that will be into clearways at the end of the lap. Unless there's a mistake for Robert Cronin, I'm not convinced Archie Clark is going to do this, and I'm certainly not convinced that he's going to take a massive risk to do this. I think, you know, as much as he'd like to finish 2nd, 3rd place is more than enough from a championship point of view. He's not going to take a big risk here, I don't think, and I'm not sure he's close enough to anyway. Down through Sterling's they go. There, though, is Jack Collins. Jack Collins comes out of the final corner, and having waited all season long to get his first race victory yesterday afternoon, he immediately follows it up with a 2nd. It's the brand Brands Hatch double for Jack Collins, and dominant victory in the feature race for the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT Championship. Robert Cronin is second, and it is Archie Clark who has to settle for third, but still scores solid championship points. Cameron Pratt-Thompson fourth, and Alex Duncan will pick up the Pro-Am victory. Neither championship contenders, Nick White or Harry Gamble, able to take the class win. Duncan then takes the checkered flag first in Pro-Am, and not far behind him, Ali Jafali, who survived that skirmish with Hadley Simpson to claim a vital Am class win. That should put him now maybe back into the Am Class Championship lead heading to Donington Park. Harry Gamble, meanwhile, well, he had that self-inflicted spin early on, and I thought that was going to prove costly for him, but he ends up 7th position, and that's decent points scored. Remember, you score more points, it's double points in the pit stop race as well, so that was a really important race for him to finish, and Nick White to not finish. 5-second track limits penalty, by the way, applied late in the going there to Dominic Paul, so he and Emma Tomlinson both picking up penalties. We never did hear anything about Ali Jafali's pit stop penalty. At least I never saw anything, so that perhaps is going to be investigated after the race, and we will have to await further updates on that. Maybe a good idea to go and head over to the Ginetta social media pages, give them a like and a follow, and then you will be the first to know if there's an amended result, and Ali Jafali ends up picking up a penalty. So, provisional results for our feature race in the Protyre Motorsport Ginetta GT Championship. It's Jack Collins who comes out a double winner from Brands Hatch, with Robert Cronin fending off the late challenge from Archie Clark to finish second. Fourth place then was Cameron Pratt-Thompson. Fifth, and the Pro-Am win goes to Alex Duncan, with Ali Jafali sixth, and the winner in the Am class. A significant win for him if he gets to keep it. Remember, he does have this potential short pit stop to be investigated. Harry Gamble then seventh, was second in Pro-Am, with Colin White in eighth and James Townsend ninth. They were second and third respectively in Am. Then Dominic Paul ahead of Emma Tomlinson and James Rowling. Oliver Fordham unfortunately retired to the pit lane. Hadley Simpson also out after that contact at Paddock Hill Bend. Luke Shaw out dramatically from the lead of the Pro-Am Championship, and Nick White equally, from the lead of the Am Championship, Nick White from the lead of the Pro-Am Championship, also a non-finisher. We are hearing, by the way, there has now been a 30-second, well, 30.353 second penalty for Ali Jafali, so he will drop to 10th place overall. It's 4th in class, but it's 10th overall. He will score 10th place points, and that means that he doesn't do the sort of damage to Luke Shaw's championship lead that he really should have been, all because of being 0.3 of a second underneath the minimum pit stop time. So let's take a look back, shall we, at the highlights of a dramatic second race of the weekend, the Ginetta GT Championship. At the start of the race, the drama kicked off immediately. Nick White tapped into a spin by Cameron Pratt-Thompson, and just like that, the Pro-Am Championship leader by a single point was out of the race. Archie Clark, the overall and Pro Championship leader, was on his toes, went from 4th to 2nd with this very brave move down Pilgrim's Drop to get ahead of Robert Cronin, his title rival, and Cameron Pratt-Thompson, who again had a less than ideal opening lap. There was a brief safety car period to recover Nick White's car from Paddock Hill Bend, and it was a demon restart for Jack Collins to pull into an immediate lead. Pro-Am Championship contender Harry Gamble, set perhaps to benefit from White's non-finish, then had a drama of his own, a spin at Surtees. He survived it undamaged, but Luke Shaw was not so lucky. The Am Championship leader in the barriers, and would eventually retire thanks to the damage. Speaking of damage, there was plenty of that sustained by Hadley Simpson, who within the space of a lap had a collision with Alex Duncan at Graham Hill Bend, and then an even bigger one with Ali Jafali, who at this point was looking set to inherit the Am Championship lead. Jafali thankfully got away with it, but Hadley Simpson's car was stuck in the gravel, going no further. Then came the mandatory pit stops, after which Robert Cronin emerged in 2nd place ahead of Archie Clark and Cameron Pratt-Thompson. That was the best of the battles in the closing stages. Cronin eventually able to hang on. It was a double win at Brands Hatch though for Jack Collins, who got his first 2 victories of the season.